Hey, what's going on, brother?
Ain't much, man. It's nighttime where you are, right?
Yeah, so it's just early evening. We just had dinner now. I wonder now if I should, I'm trying to get this light to like disturb the picture quality. So yeah, we just had dinner and it's quite hot still. It's about 7:32 p.m.
Okay.
I actually
Yeah.
forgot. I thought you were 6 hours behind, but it's
Um,
actually
it's
seven. But
seven.
I know when you
It's
when you
seven.
wind your clock forward, then it's six.
Right. For daylight
Exactly,
saving time.
exactly, man. Can you see and hear me okay?
I can.
Good.
Is your headset, is it plugged in?
No, it's wireless, but it's fully charged.
Okay. Just that's what
It's
I need to
wireless,
check
but
on.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, man. Oh, man, I'm so glad we're finally doing this. I know, like, we've been trying to talk for a minute, and just life just keeps getting busy. But I'm glad I finally just locked it into the calendar, and here we are, man. It's really an honor and a privilege.
I appreciate you, my brother. I know the first time that we met via social media was about 3 years ago.
I cannot
Um,
believe it.
yeah, time goes by fast when you're having fun.
Crazy.
Especially through a pandemic, right?
Right, right, exactly. And I
Yeah,
think it
that
was exactly around that time. It still feels
mhm.
like a big hole in time.
Yeah, I think it was like fall 2021, three
Mm.
and a half years ago.
Yeah, I was actually just listening to your Juice Box podcast because I went onto this podcast of yours, and then you mentioned it was I think it was like a 20-minute episode about the cost of insulin, and you mentioned that you made reference to the Juice Box
Mhm.
podcast, and then I actually went there, and then I just thought, let me just take a listen to your story a little bit because I know I started listening to it, but it's like nearly like 2 hours long. So I listened to it, and it was about 50 minutes or so that I got through it. And you made a statement that you were good with dates, and I remember now you said that, and you said it was fall 2021 because for some reason, like how social media works, you meet
Hmm.
lots of different diabetics, but it's
Right.
very difficult to place like the time and the place and the circumstance, as to when you met.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
To me who's been living with like that ability forever, it's normal. But when I tell
yeah,
other people about it, they're like, don't
mm,
remember that.
yeah. So
Yeah, I can
I'm
remember.
I'm similar. I'm similar, but not as detailed as you are. So I'll be able to tell you like I have a memory, and it was like 1998 or something because I remember like for example, like let's say the Tupac Greatest Hits album, the double disc CD was released. Then it's like, oh yeah, there was like just like after he had died. So it was like
Hmm.
97, 98. Then like I link a lot of
98.
my core memories, to like the release of an album or like a track or something like that.
Right.
So yes, I'm similar to you in that regard.
Yeah, you just reminded me. I forgot like you're big into music, uh production, creation, all of those things, songwriting. I forgot
Yeah,
all
I love
about
it.
that, Earl. It's been a
Yeah, I
while
love it,
since
man.
we had a
It is since
conversation.
exactly. I'm actually glad we have this dedicated time right now. So yeah, I mean, I love
Right.
it. So growing up in Cape Town, South Africa, and I was born in 1986, so that makes me like 38. I'm turning 39 right now, this year.
Right. You're the same age as my
And
little brother.
oh, okay, cool. So um, in the early 90s, there were like a couple of hip hop groups that were active in and around the underground scene in Cape Town, and I was too young to get in at the spots, but like the cassette was always passed around, and we'd always listen to the cassette. And that's how I sort of got into it because a lot of the messages in the music were against the old system, the old oppressive system. And those types of music and tapes were banned from mainstream radio because of the
Mhm.
message that they were sending out. Because the old
Yeah.
government was controlling the narrative.
Right. And you were
You know
listening
what
to
I'm
that
saying?
you were listening to that fight the power.
exactly. So that's like how I got into it. And I'm like, okay, cool. I think I got a couple of things to say. And funny enough, I actually the very first guy that I met from the US was in 1999. I think I was like 12 or 13. And it was a guy from Denver, Colorado. And he actually told me about some of the stuff that he listened to, which was like, the old Naughty by Nature, obviously the Puck and the Biggie, and a lot of the what's the 80s group, Public Enemy, you know, like from back in the day. So after a conversation with him, I'm like, oh, you know what? I've got something to say too, and then just started writing my own little rhymes. So like in two different languages, and that's how I got into it. And then after that, picked up the guitar, messed around with the keys, got good enough to play in church a little bit. And yeah, that's my story, man. I mean, I still do it. I'm just not as active anymore.
Right.
Life gets busy. And,
It does.
through all of those things, man, diabetes just tags along
Mm.
as the shadow that you cannot shake.
Well, that's why I tell everyone it has to become like second nature so
Right.
that you won't feel as though it's this hardship always. Even though we know,
Exactly.
like when we look in the mirror and we think about things, we're like, wow, we truly have to do all of these added things as compared to other people.
Mm,
That's like the number one thing that
exactly.
brings on that sense of like guilt, that burnout, that stress. When you just think about it, like you look at other people, like you have no clue.
No
Yeah.
clue at all. You wake up and you go for a walk, you go for a run, you hit the gym without even eating.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's unheard of for me. It
Yeah, like
really is.
here, where I'm at, like it snowed last night and this morning, and my wife's like, it's going to rain, so you gotta get the snow off the car before the rain, so it won't freeze. And I'm
Mm,
out there like this morning, I'm ready to go outside, me and the pup, and I'm looking at my blood sugar. I don't have my
thank you.
conversion chart up, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, it was stable. But then I
Mm,
remember I'm like, I just took some insulin because when I woke up, it was a little bit higher.
yeah.
And as soon as I'm about to go walk out the door, here comes the arrow
Yeah.
shooting down. And I'm like,
Yeah.
can't do it now.
I know. I have my reference point. So like I don't even think you need a conversion chart. So I think like 100 would be like 5.6 in the units that I use. And then like
Okay,
180 would be like 10.0. So that's like how I have certain reference points. So I'm able to sort of like estimate. I normally times it by 18 and it works.
I got you.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
you
it
just
is by
times it by
18.
8.
That's
It's
what it
18
is.
point some decimals, but 18 would get you like close enough to understand. So
Right.
yeah. So that was actually my introduction to diabetes, like using the milligrams per deciliter style. Because I don't know if you know, but I was diagnosed in the US.
Oh, give me like I don't even look, I'm going to take that note down. But before we get started,
Yeah.
let me get welcome to the Chronically Well podcast, where we hold real conversations with community that need to be heard. On today's episode, I get a chance to travel from here in the US, the United States of America, all the way to South Africa to meet with my friend Earl. Earl and I both share similar interests and likes, and we both have type 1 diabetes. We're both family men, husbands, and we just do everything we can to lessen the burden for ourselves and others. Earl, I think I first met you again fall 2021 when I was doing a World Diabetes Looks Like Who campaign. And I think that was my first time doing it.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah, it
tapped on
was.
you. I like tapped on your door and you answered my call and you're like, I got you, man. And from that moment on, like we had this budding like friendship. Like we talked about hip hop, music production, all of those things. And you just like uh helped me recall those things because I mean I remember how we like became like cool and all, but I didn't realize like that whole hip hop and music thing. But music brings us all together. It forever will.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely,
So
definitely international language. Man, it's an honor and a privilege to be on your podcast. I think like it's not often that a lot of your listeners get to hear different accents. So I'm happy to contribute to, your foreign community. It's an honor,
right,
man.
right. So Earl, could you please give our audience a summary of who you are?
Oh yeah, that's a deep question, but I am I'm a South African born, South African citizen, husband, not a father as yet. We'll see what the rest of the year holds. I'm a dad of two cats. I'm also a son, the youngest of three. I'm still blessed to have both my parents alive. I'm also a type 1 diabetic, and that's why we're having this conversation right now. Diagnosed in 2012, but apart from having diabetes, I'm also my day-to-day job involves public health, and more specifically, I work for an organization in South Africa that's similar to the National Institutes of Health that you have in the US. And our primary focus is infectious diseases, non-communicable diseases, violent injuries, and of course, HIV/AIDS that stands alone. So my job is to, I don't say I head up, but I'm responsible for a large portfolio of projects within the vaccine development program. And it started out with COVID. Now they've got to focus on HIV/AIDS and tuberculosis, which are two major issues in South Africa when it comes to infectious diseases. And then obviously there's diabetes. But we'll get into that a little later.
Right. Again, you just reminded me of something else. I I even
Oh
got
yeah.
to witness you graduating school like over the last few years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's
So I
like we're
started,
so far
yeah.
away, but we're near.
Exactly. So that was in 2022, I think. Well, the program ended in 2021, and that was the master's program in public health.
Mhm.
So I finished that in, yeah, end of 2021.
Do you have? You said you're the youngest of three.
Yeah.
What's the age difference between you and your siblings?
So I am 38. My eldest sister, who lives in the US, actually, she lives in California, in the Bay Area. She's 48. And the middle sister is 46.
So
So I'm
you're really
eight
the
years.
baby.
Yeah, yeah. I don't, honestly, man, I don't think I was planned, but yeah, here we
Look,
are. I was
look,
destined to be here.
look. May have not been your parents' plan, but it was God's plan, right?
Oh yeah, man.
Yes, sir.
For sure. Here we go.
Growing up, growing up in South Africa, did you always know that you wanted to do something along the lines that you're doing today, like working in public health?
So I had no idea. I was actually inspired by both my sisters. So the eldest one's in health and safety, and the other one's also in public health, but she's more in the academia side of things. So I guess like I always had that guidance, and I was always around people who were, I guess, like their peers and their mentors, and I would probably always have conversations with them about healthcare in South Africa and how it's an ongoing issue, and how health isn't just related to health, but it's also related to your socioeconomic situation. It's
Mhm.
related to the environment you grow up in. It's related to the culture that you're born into, your ethnicity, and all of that. And I just found those health dynamics so interesting, and I just thought, why not check this out? And, just see where I can make a contribution. I'm still trying to figure out where I'm contributing to, though. But it's a journey.
It's a journey. We know living with type 1 diabetes that life is a journey. Again, you're a 38-year-old man, in South Africa. You know. about the different trials and tribulations that have people have ensued and gone through for you to even be in the position that you're in today.
Mhm.
Like, I see them from a distance. I'm not near you, but I see them from a distance, and I think you're the third person from South Africa I've recorded with, maybe the fourth. I have someone that I recorded with a couple months ago. Their episode hasn't been released yet,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
I know that there's a lot of differences between here in the US and there in South Africa, but there's a whole lot of similarities also. Like we
Exactly.
like when we consider like European rule,
Mm.
like
Yeah, no, no, definitely, definitely. I was actually about to bring that topic up with you, and I just didn't know when I'd have the moment. But as a person of color living in South Africa, you're not gonna be born into the same privileges as someone else. And I mean, just to give you a sort of like overview, so 15% of the population in South Africa have medical insurance, right? The other 85% of the country make use of public health services, right? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to shoot down the public health services. They've got everything that they do need. And, everyone does have access to it. I mean, it takes a bit of an effort to get that access, but it is there for those who can get there. And that's a deeper conversation for later on in this recording. And I was about to say that I'm lucky enough to be part of that 15% who actually has medical insurance. But at the same time, even for someone who has medical insurance living in South Africa, I look at the amazing tech and everything that you do get in the US, and I know that comes with its own challenges, right? But I do feel like in South Africa, we are still a few steps behind in terms of getting that optimal diabetes care. I mean, we can get it, but there's a very small percentage of the population, even within that 15% who has access to private, medical insurance, who actually has access to your tandems and even your Dexcoms and all of that. I mean, I use the Libre system, and this alone was a fight with the medical insurance to even get it approved on like one medical insurance in South Africa. So the way that it's seen here is that, we're mainly dealing with type 2 diabetes, and that's mainly the case in the public healthcare system. So a lot of people actually, type 1s get treated like they are type 2s. Like I was listening to your episode earlier, and you spoke about you being on a 70/30 for a long time. Now I'm wondering if I sort of like, I mean, for those who don't know, I was diagnosed in the United States. And I feel like maybe if I wasn't diagnosed there and I was diagnosed here somewhere, I feel like I may have ended up on that 70/30 split without having a basal and without having a fast acting insulin as well, you know. But I mean, that being said, among people of color, you might be able to even have access to these services over here. But at the same time, what I've noticed, and especially among men of color, such as myself, it's like, it's almost like there's a denial, like there's nothing wrong with me. I feel like, I'd rather not know. If I'm meant to drop dead, I'll just drop dead. And then they don't take responsibility and accountability for actually getting tested, whether it's diabetes or whether it's anything else, getting your prostate checked. And I feel like a lot of men sort of like live in that denial, whereas if they just took the step to go and consult the doctor, they could have lived not only a longer life, but also a better quality of life, because it's not about how long you live, it's also like how you live.
Right. You know what's crazy, Earl? I have to interject here because
Sure.
just
Go
about a
ahead.
month and a half ago I recorded with a young lady in India. I've recorded with multiple people in India, and the first thing that they have on their list that they want to talk about is how it how diabetes in the US, specifically type 1, how it's presented. and how it looks. She's like, y'all have everything, access to everything. And
Yeah.
I said, by profession, I've been a media literacy educator and instructor for like a decade now.
Hmm.
I said, in the US, you're going to see a lot of flowers, but they're
Hmm.
not going to show you the dirt. They're not
Hmm.
going to show you the soil. I said, it's not like that.
Hmm.
Like when you were just talking about how, like in the US, we have access to different
Hmm.
technologies. It's a small
Yeah.
percent of people
So
that
that's
do.
also a select few.
A
Yeah. I
select
must say,
few.
from far and like, judging by what you see on
I
social
know.
media, you get that. You get
I
that. And
know.
I guess it's the same thing like, when you look at something from a distance, you only see the good parts.
Mhm. Yeah, so like when you do look like via social media, like we
Yeah.
see you and I here, two men of color. How many men of
Yeah.
color do you actually see with type 1 diabetes?
Yeah. No, it's very rare. And I mean, I even know of a few living over here, and like these guys, it's almost like they just don't have an interest in the condition itself. Because you think to yourself like someone's gonna be as enthusiastic as you are about type 1 diabetes,
Mhm.
and as soon as you raise it, it's almost like these guys don't know what you're talking about. Because yes, they're living with it, they're just carrying on, and I guess they just check intermittently or when something goes wrong, then they wake up. But other than that, they carry on blissfully with life, you
That's how
know?
it is for the majority of the people here as well.
Mm,
Um, just about a month ago, I was in Walmart with my daughter and we're like shopping for something, and a guy comes up to me because I had my Chronically Well podcast hoodie on. And
mhm.
he's like, yo, and I'm like, what's going on, brother? He's like, that's you? I said, the hoodie? And he's like, yeah. He's like, yo, how can I get one of them? He's like, did you make it?
Mm,
I said, yeah, this is my podcast. And he was like, I was like, you all right? And he was like, yo, he was like, I've never ever met another
mhm.
black man that's a T1D.
Yeah.
I shook his hand. I said, brother, I said, for many, many years, for probably
Mm,
about, I mean, I'm in year 22. So probably for
mm.
about 17, 16, 17 years,
Yeah.
I had never ever seen another black man with type 1
Yeah.
diabetes until I got on social media.
Yeah. So it's the same
And
thing over here. You meet a black or brown guy, and it's like if they tell you, "Oh yeah, I'm diabetic too," you automatically assume they're type 2, right? Like in your own mind, because
yeah,
like how rare is it that you
how
actually
rare.
meet another person like you who's actually type 1, and then you ask them like, "So which types of insulins are you using?" "Oh, Tresiba, Fias." Like, wait, hold on. So you were legitimate type 1 diabetic?
Mhm. Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And you can't
Yeah,
wait to
it's
like
very
exchange
rare.
information with them, right? It's
Exactly.
like, yeah, we gotta be a part of
Exactly.
it. We gotta build this club up because this man, like, I
Exactly.
exchanged numbers with him. I'm in the parking
Yeah.
lot about to pull out, and he texted me, and he was like, "Yo, he's like, it's a blessing that I met you today."
Mm,
And
mm.
he's a little older than me. I think he's like 45, 46. And
Yeah.
he's like, because man, he's like, I thought this was it. And I'm like, I
Mm.
understand, brother. I understand. And
Yeah.
he like
You,
was texting me
yeah.
nonstop.
You know what's amazing about that? Like when you actually meet someone who actually, and they start speaking to you just like about basic things with that, asking you basic questions, you actually realize that there was a reason that that person sort of like crossed your path and met
Right.
you, and you actually put there to maybe help that person. Because imagine you hadn't met that guy and something goes wrong with him because he never had the information that you may have exchanged with him.
Mhm.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So the purpose is just like goes beyond, just meeting someone in a Walmart or in a parking lot or something like that. You might actually have a legitimate his longevity of his life, also like a type of a responsibility for someone else. But on the flip side of that also is like I've had experiences where I've met type 1 diabetics and they've actually not really like sort of like responded in the way that you want them to respond to you.
Mhm.
And you've got to think to yourself, like, look, like, in my case, like I thought to myself, like I shouldn't take offense to that, because just because someone doesn't want to talk about type 1 diabetes with me, that doesn't mean that they feel a certain way towards me or something, but they could be dealing with a lot as well mentally, because the mental aspect of dealing with this, because I know I come in and out of it for a little bit, and then if I feel like I'm in a bad space, I actually go and I cancel my Instagram for like a month and a half, 2 months, just so that I can reset. Because what also happens is you see all this diabetes content, and that at the end of the day, if you're not in a good place with yourself mentally
Mhm.
and your diabetes, and you've still got like all these pressures of life and family and work and everything, then you at least just want to cut out the diabetes.
Right,
You know what I'm
right.
saying?
It's almost like the boogeyman. It's okay to cut the lights on or cut them off. Like you don't want to be a part of
Yeah,
that.
it's a
Yeah,
big boogeyman, man.
it truly is. It truly is. And at the same time,
Yeah,
like I've met non-people of color, like white people, Caucasian people with
yeah.
type 1, and they've questioned my diagnosis. I've had that in the past. They're like,
For real?
yeah, they're like, you're type 1. They're like, when were you diagnosed with, like, for real?
Mm, mm,
Even like via like social media, like I've put up like my medical papers, charts and stuff. They're like, when were you diagnosed? What? And they're like, what antibodies do you have and things of that nature? And I'm like, would you do this to a white man?
mm.
Like, oh, for real. Like, I'm
Yeah,
unapologetic.
yeah. I hear
Yeah.
you. I hear you, man. I mean, like I've never had like any sort of like similar experiences here, but I
Hmm.
must say, like the Cape Town Type 1 community, they're mainly white folks, because I feel like maybe they're just more vocal by nature about type 1 diabetes. And I think around the epidemiology of it as well, type 1 diabetes mainly affects Caucasians, right? And I think that is also another factor. But at the same time, like I said, us black and brown folks out here, we don't even want to talk about it. We don't want to be involved. But I must say, I haven't received any negative sort of like responses from them.
Hmm.
But I think, like, if I can sort of share something, it's more like on the assumption that I can afford all the tech, all this, that. So, I mean, they'd be trying to help me, like, oh, you should try
Right.
to get this, you should use this, you got to change your diet to that and this. And it's like, okay, cool. So I don't come from money. So it's really difficult for me to have all these co-payments and the top medical insurance plans that allows me
Hmm.
like two of these things in the month. So maybe there's just like, a sort of like an assumption that I can like, afford all the good stuff.
Right. They're
So I
like
think
he's a
I
man of color with T1D. Look, he got some money
mm,
because regular men
no,
of color don't have T1D.
right?
And
Yeah,
that
no,
dates back to a century ago, like 1922, when Dr. Frederick Banning in
yeah.
Toronto discovered insulin. Um, it was decades before the first person of color was given insulin. Like after that,
I never knew that.
yes,
I
yes,
never
and
knew that.
there was I want to say it was in the early 1930s when the first child of color, but adults of color, it was not even thought of.
Wow.
Like there was a
Yeah.
young girl in India. She was 12 years old and she was given insulin. And
Mm.
she's known as the first child of color to be given insulin. And yeah, for not for until like the 1940s, did they think like black people could have type
Wow.
1
That is
diabetes.
insane, because also that's insane. That's insane.
Right.
So obviously on the race level as well, and also as on the age level, because type 1 diabetes, a lot of people think it's only kids,
Mhm.
and I myself was diagnosed at the age of 26.
You were diagnosed at
It's,
the age of 26. So
that's
you
insane. I've
you
been living my
almost,
life.
yeah, you knew the trajectory of everything you wanted to do, become, uh,
Hmm.
all of those things.
Exactly.
You done had relationships, been to school, then had different types of jobs, but then you were given
Mm.
this onset of diabetes at the young
Yep.
age of 26. You weren't old. You were
Yep.
still young. You were still your parents'
Yeah.
baby, no matter what.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Still am.
I was diagnosed at 20 years old or 20
Okay.
years young. Do you
Yeah.
know, can you recall your diagnosis story? Especially growing up, like living in South Africa,
Yeah.
you were diagnosed in the US. Like,
Exactly. Yeah, so I was working my first job since graduating university, and I was given the opportunity in 2012. So my boss comes to me and he's like, "Hey, do you want to go with us to the NIH? We go into this conference on fetal alcohol syndrome for 4 days in DC." And I'm like, "Oh yes, definitely, I want to go." And then I think a couple of weeks after that, I started getting all the classic symptoms. Thirst, exhaustion. You wake up in the morning and it feels like it's impossible to lift your head up. So
yeah,
I had that, and also, like I said, I had my sister living in Oakland at the time, Oakland, California, and I'd also booked a local flight to go to her. And I was like, nah, but I've got to see my sister. I hardly see her. So I felt bad, went to two doctors. Both of the doctors actually said, "Oh, it seems like I'm overworked and I've got a lot of stress. Take these vitamins, take this, have that." And I just got worse and worse and worse up until the day I had to fly. And all the way on the flight, I live in Cape Town, South Africa. And all the way up, we went up Africa and we stopped in Senegal, Dakar to refuel. And then we went all the way over the Atlantic Ocean, landed at Washington, Dallas. And by then, I was in full DKA. And as soon as we landed, got to the hotel, my sister from California called. She's like, "Mom said you're not feeling good." She called the hotel. And then I said, "Yeah, I'm not feeling good." And she called an ambulance, and the ambulance picked me up. And we were just outside of DC in Maryland. And then I went to a hospital in the DC area. Um, and then I was diagnosed like 2 days later.
wow.
And that was insane because work had booked the travel, so they paid for it, and we also had travel insurance. So I was able to stay in a private hospital in the US. I think like for 3 days it was like close to like $100,000, and the travel insurance could cover it all. I just had to pay my insulin stuff, which was like a few $100, I think, back in 2012. Don't even want to know what it is now.
Wow. Did
Yeah, so
you,
that's my story.
yeah, I was like wondering, like first I was like, I wonder if he thought that it was something to do with the travel, like, or if when you first
Yeah.
got seen, were they thinking like, huh, maybe it's because he's
Mm.
about to travel to the US that he may be dealing with like some nerves or anxious. Um,
Yeah, I did have that feeling kind of, but I was already, I think, feeling really sick the morning of like a few days before the flight already. And I think that the stress of the flight really brought that on.
right.
It really brought it on. Yeah. And I was trying to
Yeah,
drink energy drinks. I was trying to drink like Red Bull on the plane because I
probably
was
full sugar.
yeah. So when I got to the hospital and they tested my blood sugar, I was at 848.
Yeah.
So yeah, 848, which is like 47 in like the unit that we use in South Africa.
Mhm. Is that the highest you've been since diagnosis?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the
Hmm.
highest. That's the highest.
Right.
I haven't been higher than that.
Mhm.
I think like the highest I've got was probably like half of that.
Right. I was
And
wondering if you had thought that, like, sheesh, I just traveled here. I thought I was about to enjoy this stay, but I might die here in the US.
yeah, so it's weird though because like I thought to myself like, okay, cool. I just need to go to the hospital quickly, just feel better, and I can enjoy the rest of the stay. Maybe it might take a day or two, but I actually ended up staying in the US for like close to a month.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, like, I wasn't, I wasn't scared about like being told I had diabetes. It was more of a relief because I'd
Hmm.
been feeling
Same.
bad for like a month.
Same.
And I'm like, oh, so that's what's up, and then I figured out, okay, cool. So now you know what's wrong with me. So give me the stuff I need to feel better.
Right. I remember
And
that during diagnosis, I felt the same way. Like,
yeah,
oh
it's like,
yeah, that's what it is.
oh,
Give me that
yeah,
insulin, and now I'm better.
exactly. But I had no idea there were so many different things to it. You
Right.
know,
That's where it
the,
starts.
the education nurse came to see me, the insurance lady came to see me, the dietitian came to see me. And you know what the old thing is like, oh, so your meat needs to be the size of your fist,
This.
and your carbs need to be the size of your fist, and your veggies and your salads need to be the half of your plate. I'm like, okay, cool.
Mhm. Yeah, they showed you those
Yeah.
portions.
Exactly. Just like you take this, you eat that, you'll be good. But yeah, I guess even for diabetes educators, they don't get the full scope of everything and how it's not a one size fits all.
Right. The time leading up to your diagnosis, do you recall ever being sick or dealing with any like trauma, anything?
Um, so the time leading up to it, right? So what happened is, um, I started noticing that like about 3 months prior, I started getting low symptoms, which is strange. And it would happen like if I have my breakfast, and I used to work in a healthcare clinic in a facility, just doing like
Mhm.
research work. And I would see patients, interview the patients, fill out questionnaires with them as part of a research study. And I realized like 2 to 3 hours after breakfast, I would start to get shaky, and I start to feel confused, and I start to sweat. And as soon as I eat something like a fruit or sandwich or something, then I'll feel better. So that started happening. And then it stopped, and I just started getting like the itchy skin, the thirst. And it's funny because I had a cut on my arm, and the cut wouldn't heal. It just stayed raw, and that wouldn't scab. And I realized that I also had an incident where I was quite aggressive, and I didn't know what was happening because I was behind the wheel. I was like this 26-year-old guy, just fully charged all the time, always feeling angry, driving hard in traffic. And one day a cop pulled me over. And this was about 4 days before I was supposed to leave for the US. And he wanted to book me because I was driving really, really bad in a residential area. And he wanted to book me. And then he said to me, so, like, what do you do? It's like, oh, I work in this community in Cape Town. It's a really like bad and poor community. And, we had like a pregnancy program for the ladies there. And he's like, oh, so you do good work in the community, but why are you acting this way? And I told him, look, sir, I'm really sorry. I don't know. I just have this feeling in me that, like, I just feel mad all the time and I don't know what's happening. He's like, I'm going to let you go with a warning. And I'm like, wow, thank you. Which is quite unheard of out here.
Oh, they don't give
And
warnings.
no, 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 that
They
was just like,
they ask
they were,
questions last.
yeah. So I've had friends actually, just been thrown in the back of the police van, So they don't use like always use cars out here. Some of them use vans, and like a lot of them just like they just like get beat up in the van and then just like released. No
Right.
charges pressed, nothing.
They give you that
So
little
I was lucky
spanking.
enough. Yeah.
Be that, yeah, like you're a
So
child.
exactly. So anyways, I got away with that. But those are the type of patterns that I displayed when I was
Mhm.
leading up to the diagnosis. And yeah, that was a crazy time, man. I mean, I could
Yeah,
have
when you
ended up
tell
in
me,
jail.
you, or worse. I mean,
Exactly.
just I was thinking like if you weren't diagnosed in the US, like if you were diagnosed in Cape Town, it could have been a whole nother series of
Yeah.
events. Or if you
Yeah.
went into a DKA on a plane and they had to make some emergency stop, not knowing what was
Man.
going on. Um, like
Yeah.
ahead of your diagnosis, you were saying that like you were eating and you noticed like you would go low like after
Mm.
that
Yeah.
was your liver actually dispensing that last little bit of insulin, like it was
Mm.
pushing it out at a
Like the
rapid
pancreas. Yeah.
pace. Yes, it was pushing it out at a rapid pace. Yeah, you were getting little spurts of it until it all
So,
dried
so
out.
you had the same thing happen to you.
Yeah,
Okay, it makes sense now. Makes
yeah.
sense now. Yeah, that was odd though, because like right after I eat, it's almost like I don't know what's happening. Like I just feel like I'm about to pass out. But yeah, but I think like if I were to be diagnosed in Cape Town, I think look there are some good facilities here, but I think my problem was is that I never went to a diabetes specialist in the beginning. But how was I supposed to know? You know,
Right.
because I wasn't a diabetic, so I just went to a regular doctor, and they never referred me for further testing because if they had done that, then they probably would have seen my blood sugar was probably like sky high. And I think then, if I were to be diagnosed, I probably would have been okay, but it would have taken like a serious sort of like event that happened before I actually got diagnosed or gotten the care that I actually need.
Right, because you're a 26-year-old young man, so
Mhm.
being diagnosed with anything, you're like, I can handle
Yeah,
this. Because, I
exactly.
mean, you're a person of color, living in the world you
Yeah,
lived in, wasn't nothing stopping you, right? Like,
mm,
you didn't,
exactly.
you didn't seen everything that happened generations before even your birth. You didn't seen your
Mm,
people rise. So,
mm,
like, no matter
exactly.
what the climate,
Exactly.
you were
So
gonna make it happen.
exactly. I mean, and I think like that's also like the attitude that I take with me right now. And I think like a lot of look, my parents, my dad's a carpenter by trade. So he used to work construction at first, and then he specialized in carpentry. So he would work like with the wood. And my mother worked like in a factory where they would like make shoes. So it's not like I come from families who's like, parents are like doctors and lawyers,
Right, hardworking, blue
no,
collar.
yeah, there's no full banks or like, you know,
Right.
there's no uncle, there's
I'm
no
not calling
uncle
them for a
Phil over
loan.
here.
Like I need a loan. Not happening.
Exactly.
We got to find a
So
way to make this happen.
exactly. So like I said, my dad started out as a carpenter, and then later on he improved himself. He did like the certification exams, and he became a regulatory expert in like buildings and construction.
Okay.
And then he worked for the city of Cape Town, where you would go out and various building projects that are sort of launched by either by the state or the government, or by in the private sector as well. Then you would like inspect it and that. So I mean, he's a good example that I use in terms of take what you're given, work with what you got. You just try to improve your life a little bit, become a bit better than you were yesterday.
Yeah, you just reminded me of something again. About
Uh-huh.
2 years ago, I told you, I said, I plan on traveling in the future. And I said, you got a space for me if I were to come to Cape Town. You said, yeah. What's
For sure.
okay? Yeah, I
For
remember
sure.
now. I recall. Yeah, so I've been making a
definitely.
list of everyone I've talked
Well,
to.
connection was a bit bad there. Sorry about that.
Okay, yeah, I've been making a
Something
list of.
happens.
Can you hear me clear?
Yeah, something happens. Yeah, something happens like after 8 p.m. over here where like the connection just comes in and goes.
Okay. Yeah, but I've been
Yeah,
making
so
a list of people who I've spoken to and where they live, so that when I
uh
travel,
it's free.
yeah,
It's free all over. Do it that way
hmm
because accommodation's actually the thing that kills your budget.
right. I
But
don't have to
I
stay in
think
no
for
hotels or hostels.
yeah, exactly. But you know what? I think for someone from the US where you would pay like 150 to $200 for like a 3 or 4 star place in the US, you could probably get like 3 or 4 stars in Cape Town for like $50.
That's
So
good.
it would be a lot. It would be a lot cheaper, you know. And do you drink alcohol?
I don't.
You don't? Okay, so same here. Same here. I've actually got a very bad story with that.
Look,
Very,
well,
very
there's no
bad,
better place
man.
than here.
Yeah, so what happened was I was at a work function in 2015. This was 10 years ago. And occasion I was never a heavy drinker, right?
Mhm.
I was always just like I'll have like 1 or 2 beers, or I'll have like some red wine or something, just like for a special occasion. And this was a work dinner, and I had ordered a glass of red wine, and it was one of these fancy places where the waiter keeps like topping you up, the fancy places with the white
Mhm.
tablecloths, and the waiters like always like hanging around the table, just topping and filling your glass all the time. So he kept doing that to me, and I kept thinking I'm drinking the same glass.
Oh man.
And yeah, exactly. And this was all before dinner arrived, right? So dinner comes, I check my blood sugar, and that time I was still on the old machine, the AccuCheck. And I'm like checking, and I'm like, okay, cool, 9, which is like 165, right? And I'm like, okay, cool. Let me just take some of this insulin, and I take about 4 units, and I get lamb chops, and I get the fries, and I have all the lamb chops, and I start eating on the fries, but I don't finish all the fries, right? And I'm still going on with the red wine. And about like an hour or so, hour and a half, 2 hours later, and I look at my colleague, and my colleague's talking, but I'm like,
What's going
why am I
on?
struggling to focus, right? Right? And anyways, I carry on, and then I say goodnight to everyone. And I'm like, oh, cool. Before I drive, let me just do this blood sugar check. And I check, and on my machine, it said zero point 0.6. And in your numbers, that would be 11. So that was 11 milligrams a deciliter.
Hmm.
And when I saw that number, I just started shaking, and I just started getting hot. And
Yeah, you
my
were
colleague,
rising.
no, 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 I was
Oh, it was
dropping.
okay. It
So
was low.
it was 11,
You
11
said it.
mgdl, 11 low.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was like all the way down.
That
And
alcohol.
and I was just like on that number, and I take my colleague's Coke, and I just take his Coke, and I just start drinking his Coke.
His
And
coke
I
was your
take
coke.
exactly, and I took his cheesecake, and I just started eating cheesecake. And since that day, I made the decision to quit alcohol
Oh, so it was because of a. I mean, it wasn't a
because
decision
of a
of your
sudden
own. It
event.
was because of yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Sheesh.
Yeah, that
That's
was
what typically
bad, man.
happens for everyone. Like a sudden event happens. You mentioned that
Yeah,
before about your
yeah,
diagnosis. Like maybe if a sudden event would have happened, then it would have been different. But
yeah.
yeah, it's
So,
good that you
so,
were able
so,
to
what made you
check that.
decide, though?
Oh, I've
What
never
made you
been.
decide?
I have never ever been a drinker ever in my life.
Mm. Yeah, you're always
Yeah,
into sports, huh?
always
You're
have
always
been.
into sports, shoot hoops, and you know,
Run track, football. But I've never,
nice.
like everybody I know drinks. I don't have nothing against it. It's just never
Yeah, me
been
either.
Never been a choice or an option for me.
Yeah.
Like,
And it's nice waking up like, when your head doesn't hurt. You wake up fresh.
mhm.
You wake up and you're good to go. Are you an Eagles fan, man?
Oh yeah, you know it.
Oh man, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Were you able to
Yeah.
watch the Super Bowl?
No, that was like 3 in the morning, man.
Okay.
I sleep in my best.
Are you able to follow American football like
So there
the
was a
sport?
time I used to follow NBA a lot.
Hmm.
And my sister, so this is a funny story though. I was actually in Philly in 2019, and that was also for work. So I was at the convention center,
Hmm.
and then next to the convention center you get the Reading Terminal Market.
Right. You were down in Center
That
City.
exactly. So I was at the market, and I see everybody like greeting this dude, really tall dude, looks about 6'4". And I go up to him. I'm like, "Hey, you play in the NBA or in the NFL?" And he's like, "Oh, I play in the NFL." I'm like, "Oh, what's your name?" And he's like, Alshon Jeffrey.
Okay.
Yeah, and then
Wide
I like, "Oh, I'm
receiver.
like, cool, yeah, exactly." Oh, it's nice to meet you. And then I took a picture with him.
Mhm.
But it was so strange. And then I had another incident at the hotel where that year was June, so it was the NBA finals between the Raptors and between Golden State Warriors, right? And I have a Golden State Warriors vest because my sister lives out there,
That was
right?
when Kawhi. Yeah.
Right? So I'm wearing my vest and I go down to the hotel bar and I be getting this dirty looks from this guy across the bar, man. And then someone told me, so there's one thing about Philly. It's the city of brotherly love, but don't wear another team's jersey, man.
Yeah, we love our
So,
sports teams. We love our sports
yeah,
teams. Like,
right. I should have had my sixes.
yeah, if you wear
I should
another
have had.
sports team or you represent another sports team, it's like you're an alien.
Oh man, yeah. So I learned that the hard way. I learned that the hard way. And
Mm,
the guy actually said something to me, and he's like, "Oh, Golden State, huh?" And I'm like, "Whoa, picking up a lot of
look,
hostility right
like
now."
it's popularity. I mean, I'm from South Africa. Golden
Yeah,
State's been the
exactly.
champions, right?
Yeah, that's
I get
exactly
it.
what I said.
I
But
get
now I
it.
know next time I'm coming out there, I'm definitely getting my Eagles and
Yeah,
I'm getting my Sixes, and my
yeah,
Phillies, for the baseball shirt.
yeah. I'm not I'm not into baseball much. I was into it a little when I was growing up, like coming up, but as an adult,
Yeah,
I haven't
yeah, it takes
been.
too long.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was
Yeah,
going to say. Takes too long
yeah,
and it's not enough impact. Like
yeah. So
for
that's
real.
that's actually how I feel about soccer as well.
You know,
I feel like I'm not going to sit like for a whole 90 minutes and watch a game and the score's like
right.
0-0.
Hmm.
Then what's the point of watching the game? So South Africa, we're big fans of rugby.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't know if you follow rugby or if you know, but the South African rugby team are currently the world champions.
Yep.
Yeah, so they won it in 2019 and they won it in 2023.
Right.
And
Have you played
yeah, so
rugby?
I've always been a small guy, so I was
See,
I was never
I
like,
mean, I don't know from social media. Like you say, you're
yeah,
small. How tall are you?
man, I'm like 5'7".
Oh, I didn't know that. You look
Yeah,
6 foot.
no, well, I'll take it. I mean, in
Yeah.
in terms in terms, I'm 5'9" though.
I got you. I got you. You gotta look. That's like basketball players. They do it all the time. Like my brother, he texted me last week and he's talking about because I was telling him I saw certain basketball players at a event I was at with my youngest son,
Yeah.
and I was like, yeah. I said, wasn't he listed as 6'7" in the NBA? I said he's like 6'3", 6'4", and he's like, yeah. You got to add 2 to 3 inches.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like I've always been into the sport, but I admired it, but it's a little bit sort of like a rough for my liking because a lot of the rugby players get brain damage later in life. So
Uh-huh.
the ALS and everything
Right.
that
Right.
people
Right.
get in American football, but in
Hmm.
rugby you don't wear any helmets, you don't wear any shoulder pads, nothing. It's just like your body on another guy's body, at full
Right.
impact.
That
So
contact. Yeah, that's why
exactly.
my wife's like saying like our boys aren't playing football only if they
Yeah.
really want to, but it's not something we're going to promote. Like you should go play football. Let's sign
Mm,
you up for a team. Nah, not happening.
exactly. Yeah, I
Not
mean,
happening.
like I think a lot of the younger boys these days are getting into tech anyway.
Mhm.
So they just end up, just learning how to code and, learning all the intricacies of IT,
Oh
which
yeah,
is safer, I guess.
so they can take over the from your boy because we don't want him running anything around here. That's your guy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I think,
How do y'all feel about him? Yeah,
man, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't claim him, man.
I
I
don't
don't claim
either.
him.
I
I,
don't,
I don't, I don't, I don't
he's
think,
a,
I don't even think he claims us.
he doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, the funny story is, I'll give you some context on that, right? So he was born here, and I think he left, but he wasn't from my city. He's from a city about 1,000 miles away from me. And here's the thing, right? So because of all the years of segregation, there's been certain laws put in place to help black and brown people sort of like come up and match, our white counterparts, and to try and get ahead and to try and like eliminate systemic racism, I guess. And a lot of it is also to do like with job preferences. So if there's a certain job that used to be sort of like white dominated, and then provisions are made for firstly uh disabled people, first of all, and then after that you'll get like black female, um then a black male, then like white female, and white males not the bottom of the pile, right? So he wanted to open a company over here or extend one of his companies over here, but he doesn't want those principles to apply to his company. And then because of that, his buddy who's chilling in the Oval Office, right? He says to him, "Oh, there are bad things happening in South Africa, and also there's a land reforms program happening because in previous years, a lot of the land that was black owned was stripped away from them. So, in other words, the government's trying to go and to get into a program where they actually sort of like they go through the land reforms process where they then sort of like compensate the white owner, who acquired this land through many generations passed down to him, but in the very beginning of time, it was taken away from a black man. So now it's like they're trying to give that the land back to the family, but obviously they'll compensate someone to get that land back from him. But now the narrative that's being spread over there is people are just going onto the farms and taking land away from white people by force. You know what I'm saying? And that's not actually what's
Yeah.
happening. But because of that, so a lot of aid was cut to South Africa. So a lot of funding for healthcare programs and that. And I personally know some people, and I've met some people who've actually like lost their job within the space of like a couple of weeks since that happened. And yeah, it's just bad, man. It's just
Right. It's
bad, bad,
bad
bad.
for people like
But yeah, but
you
I
and
must say
I.
though, I don't. I think
Yeah. People like us who
yeah,
like
yeah,
working in
exactly.
public health
So
and
I actually,
helping people. Um, it's like those
exactly,
guys are
exactly.
selfish. It's more so about their selves and things that they encounter throughout their lifetime. They don't think about previous or the future. They think about
Mm,
them and
yeah,
now.
exactly, exactly. But I think also I think it's also good. It's a good opportunity also for us to educate, like for like a lot of the people, and especially in the US, where they're being fed a message that we out here taking land away from people by force, and it's a good opportunity to educate people, and not only in the US but globally, like on the history of South Africa and all the complications that come with it. You know,
Right.
I mean, even like my dad, my father's father, right? So he's from a small town about 300 miles outside of where we live, and previously, black and brown people couldn't own two properties, right? You can only own one. So he had both in the small town, and then the government sort of like told him like, oh, here's like $100, whatever. Thanks, be on your way. We take this land off your hands. And then something like 50 years later or so, my dad and his brothers and sisters went through the program, and then they actually work on a piece of land and what it's worth now. And then because my grandpa is deceased, that money that he would have been paid back actually gets divided up among his kids. So we went through that process now, and it took about almost 2 years to actually get something paid out. But I mean, each of them got a piece. So it wasn't
Right.
much though. But I mean, it's something, I guess.
Yeah, it's
And
just that,
I guess they're on the right track.
right? It's just when you think about like during his lifetime, they tr they tried taking this from him.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly. And I mean, like, we weren't there, but I mean, I can imagine it probably maybe it wasn't by force. It was like something that was made to be out as something good for you.
mhm.
It's like, hey, look, have you ever had $100?
Right, try to show
You
him
know, take this
opportunity
100.
that wasn't real
Yeah,
opportunity.
hold this 100. Yeah, hold this
Like,
100. Let me hold this land.
right, and there's nothing more valuable
You
than the
know what
land.
Yeah, exactly, man. And I mean, like, it's crazy though. Hey, have you ever tried to sort of like go on the Ancestry website
Oh
and
yeah,
sort of like give your
I've,
DNA
yep,
sample?
yeah, I've done that. I've traced my roots.
No way. So where's like your biggest percentage of origin?
Hold on. This might let me bring this up.
I'll give you a minute. I'm gonna guess like either Ghana, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, um, maybe
You're
Benin.
guessing. You're trying to
Yeah,
guess.
I'm trying to
Um,
I'm trying to given your
I know.
features and given the people I know you.
Okay. I do know that there's a big portion in Senegal.
Mm-hmm.
So right near like Goree Island, where a lot of
Mm,
like the European slave trade
mm,
was formed that brought
yeah,
a lot of the Africans over to the US.
yeah. So how many have you been able to trace like the number of generations back? Like who was your ancestor who actually came to the US? I think that's
I
probably expensive, huh?
Yeah, I haven't been able to trace that far
Yeah.
back. The furthest
Yeah.
back I get is like what, like 4 or 5 generations.
Mm,
So,
mm,
great great grandparents, because like
yeah.
my mom and my both my parents grew up like their parents grew up in rural areas in the
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
US. And so with that being said, like other than DNA, it's hard to trace back where they began.
Mm, hmm. I
I'm
hear
trying to
you.
bring it up, but I know it's going to take a minute. I gotta
Yeah,
actually log
exactly.
in. Yeah. Do you know
Oh
where
yeah? No, no, no.
do you know where your how far back your DNA traces to where you are?
So I managed to actually get records of, so my sister's doing a lot of it out of California, funny enough.
Mhm.
So a lot of, but I'm telling you, bruh, my DNA is mixed, bruh, like crazy.
Okay, so I'm
I'll
I have
break
mine
that
pulled up
down for
right
you in a
now.
second. Oh yeah, yeah, you got it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool.
So Cameroon, Congo, Western Bantu peoples, 26%.
Yeah,
Nigeria,
I've got that too.
22%, 22%
Nice.
Nigerian. Benin, Togo, 15%. Senegal, 9%. Ivory Coast and Ghana, 7%. Mali, 6%. And the rest is Wales, 6%. Like I
What?
tell like, yeah, yeah, I tell my youngest son, I said I'm 100% black. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm 100% black, but I'm 6% Welsh.
Yeah. That's cool, man.
He's like,
So
what? How?
so that's your one drop rule in reverse. It's like,
Hmm.
and just get a British passport. It's like, hey, I'm 6% white.
Right, right, right.
Yeah,
So
so
yeah, that.
yeah, so I managed to trace it back to I think like the 1880s,
Hmm.
and that is about I think five or six generations back. And I think like my ancestors were also they were they lived in not too far from where we are, but they were farm workers. So I mean, you can only imagine, they were probably working for like white farm owners. So yeah,
Hmm.
and as far as like my ethnicity is concerned, so the majority of my percentage is like what you would probably call like native South African, which would be like similar to, and I think this is the politically correct term. Can you say Native Americans?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So native South African, which is like the Khoi and the San people.
Yeah, the indigenous.
Um, the indigenous people, exactly. And then, a portion of it is Filipino that I have, and that's also as a result of the slave trade
Hmm.
from the east to the west. So I've got Filipino in me, and then I've got other African in me as well, Congo, mainly, and like West African Bantu people I've got in me as well. And then I've got some European, because I know that my great great grandmother, I think she was a white lady that also married a black guy over here, and I think she may have been either from Ireland or yeah, somewhere out there. It was Ireland, and then I think on my dad's side, I think they may have been French somewhere. So yeah, the mix is crazy, man. That's crazy, but it really
But it's
makes you want to
mostly
go
like
back.
African and European,
Yeah,
some Asian. Got you.
yeah, exactly.
Nothing in the Americas.
No, no, everything just either East or African or like 9% or so European.
Right. That's like
So yeah,
a lot of black people here from Central America to North America. A
yeah.
lot of them think that they have native blood, like Native American blood.
Mm.
Um Many of them do. And growing up, people will be like, "Yeah, they'll say I have Indian blood." That's what they would
I
say.
didn't get that. I didn't get that.
Growing up,
Sorry,
they would
what?
be like, growing up, they would say, I have Indian blood because that's what the
Oh, okay.
European settlers called Native Americans here because
Mm,
they resembled people from
yeah,
India to them.
yeah,
And
yeah. So
as you go
whereas
through and
India
look,
is a whole other country on its own.
yeah, exactly. But as you
Yeah,
go through like ancestry, DNA, and things,
yeah.
we find out that there's a very small percent of people who have African descent background here in the Americas that have any Native American blood.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Exactly. And when I came to the US the first time, which was 2006, and we never had any real social media back then. I think Facebook was just launched.
Mhm.
And I would tell people I'm from South Africa, and they're like, "Oh, but you're light skinned." Like, you know. I'm like, well, you know, you do get light skinned Africans too.
Right.
Because they just assumed everyone's dark. But I
Yeah.
think like with social media and time, and I mean it's actually through social media that I've met so many cool diabetics and we've just built this community. I mean, social media is bad, for so many things, but it's also good for like connecting people and especially like-minded people. And here's the strange thing, right? So the first other diabetic, type 1 diabetic that I met ever was a white dude from Boston
Greg,
who was an intern in my office in Cape Town in South Africa.
that was Greg, right?
And yes, that was Greg,
I
exactly.
remember.
Exactly. And then he introduced me to his buddy, Brandon, which I think you probably know Brandon.
Brandon Denson.
Yeah, he's from like the Michigan area. I think he's from
Yep,
just,
yep, yep, yep.
yeah.
Ypsilanti, Michigan.
And and get this, then Brandon introduces me to a girl in South Africa that's type 1 diabetic. And
Mm.
that was the very first other South African person, that I've met. I mean, I've met one other kid before, but I've never really stayed in touch with him. But in terms of our community, so my community in South Africa started because there was an American intern in my office.
Right.
How crazy is that, man? It's
That's
just
how the
like
connection
fate and
began.
everyone just connected. Exactly. But I also realized, just because someone has diabetes, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna be your friend, or it doesn't necessarily mean that they're your peoples.
I mean, there's
I
still a
I don't
lot
know
of
if you've
people.
experienced that.
There's a lot of people who, like if you'll bring up to them, like, oh, you're a diabetic, you're type, they'll be like, back
Yeah,
off, like, some people, like, there's many people who are like that, especially like
mm,
older adults. They're like,
yeah,
they still come
yeah,
from that perception that diabetes means bad, mishandling, health,
yeah,
and all of those things.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But I think like what I actually am referring to is like when people like you and I, and we meet other diabetics as well, because
Everybody
like
not cool
when
like us.
exactly. So like you meet someone else who has type 1 diabetes, and like in the beginning when I was very naive, you think to yourself like this person's gonna be my new best friend. But then you realize like some people actually have like really bad characteristics, like I mean we've all got good and bad in us, but like you realize like, oh, like, oh, you have type 1 diabetes, like, were you a terrible person before or after? You know what I'm saying? So, and I guess all people are just not social like that, and that's okay. I respect everyone and their space and their boundaries.
Outside
So,
of outside of this, I'm not super social at all.
mm,
Like really, like other than like my brother, my sister, my
yeah,
wife, like I
yeah.
don't. Yeah, those
And you know what? That's actually social enough, man. Like I used to be very social in my 20s. I
same,
used to have I used to have my musician friends. I used to have my sports friends,
same.
people in the neighborhood friends, and then it just gets smaller and the quality just gets
Hmm.
better. So it's just my wife and I on a Friday night. It's just the two of us, man. We just we're watching movies, we get something to eat, and that's it. And then we have like two or three other very close friends, and that's about it. And that circle actually is like enough of a support circle when it comes to diabetes, because you cooking dinner with him, you maybe making something on the grill, and you're like, you know, I know you've used the excuse before, when you're really hungry and you're like, listen, I gotta eat now. I'm not waiting for everything to be done. So let me just eat now, and you use your
Look,
diabetes as your to your advantage.
the craziest
It's your
thing is
privilege.
my dad used to do that to me. Like
Mm,
I remember dating back to at least like 2012. Oh, the year you were diagnosed. Look, I was
yeah,
already 9 years in, but I
yeah,
remember being at my aunt's funeral service or her like the repast, and my dad's
mm,
like, Will needs to go up and eat. He needs to get in line first because he's a diabetic and he needs to eat. And I'm like, chill, man. Like he used to always
and
do
and
that.
I've got to guide him there so I can also get a plate, while we're
Right.
at it.
He used to always do that. And I'm like, nah, I'm all
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, man.
Living with diabetes for the last almost 13 years, right?
Yeah, you can say it's 13 years. It's 13 years this year.
Yeah, your diabetes
I
has
mean, like a
become a
kid would have gone through school already.
yeah, your diabetes is a teenager this year.
Yeah,
We know
exactly.
living with the chronic health condition is life altering. We do know we have our days of emotional distress, burnout,
Mm,
all of those things because I mean, we're relying on man-made insulin.
mhm,
We cannot control the emotions that do ensue when our blood sugar is dropping low or rising
mm,
fast and rapid. We can't control that, but we try to as much as we can. That's something that's not added into that extra 180 decisions we make
mm.
with our choices daily.
Yeah.
How do you, Earl, as a man, again, 13 years in, you're almost a veteran in the diabetes space.
Getting there.
Right. How do you stay motivated, upbeat, and just, stay focused on your main goals?
So what I've actually learned is, sometimes you just can't control everything, whether it's diabetes or anything in life. And at times I just accept like, look, I'm having a bad day or I'm having a bad week or a bad month. And what I try to do is, to not get overwhelmed with emotion so that I can actually still think clearly and, make the best decisions for my blood sugars at that moment. I just accept that that is happening,
That,
and I tell myself like, okay, cool. Let me just see what I can do about this now to get it a little bit better. And one thing that I do still struggle with is a continuous fear of lows. And I think that for me gets me the most because the main emotion, um, you know, that sort of like, or the strongest form of of this emotion that I get is when I need to handle something. Because as adults, we've got certain things that need to be handled at a certain moment. Whether you need to get in your car, you need to drive somewhere, you got to do this meeting for work, or you know just go to the store, get dinner or something to bring home for the family. And then you think to yourself like, okay, cool, about to drive and now there's low hits, or I'm very, very high right now. Like, let's say you're like 350 plus,
right.
then it's like now you get frustrated because you feel almost like your mind is clouded and you're not able
Oh,
to
you don't feel
focus
it,
while
it
driving.
is clouded and you can't
Yeah,
focus
yeah.
even though you try your hardest.
Exactly. So now you feel like, now I've just got to wait until I feel a bit better. Now it's almost like your life gets a little bit delayed,
Mhm.
and you're out of control for making decisions for your life. When you want to make those decisions. So it's almost like diabetes is now trying to dictate to you, like, no, you will not drive now. First get your blood sugars down. So I just realized that that's just part of it, and I try not to be too hard on myself when you're out with friends, you're taking a walk, suddenly you get a low. Now you first got to sit down and treat this low before you can walk further. Now you're holding up the whole group.
Look,
you know
you're,
what?
you're you're
And
you're
then
not
you feel
holding them
bad.
up. You're not holding
You
them
see,
up. It's only
so
it's only you, this one
yeah,
person. If you got a group of people, they
exactly,
they should care for you
exactly.
enough. They're like, okay, I'm gonna try to figure this out and
Mm,
understand Earl more, understand Will a
yeah,
little bit better. They should not
exactly.
look at us like we're some type of burden. It's not our
Mm,
fault that we have type 1
exactly.
diabetes. It's not our fault
Yeah.
our blood sugar drops or rises. Like for the most
Mm,
part, it's not. It's not in our
yeah,
control. Only thing we can do
exactly.
is, I mean, like you said, we gotta accept it. And second,
Hmm.
like we gotta really learn how to treat it. Diabetes is
Yeah,
something that we must continuously treat. Like
exactly.
it's almost like uh remember when you became a teenager and you felt independent and you do this and do that, but still you had to call on your parents for certain things. There were certain
Hmm.
things you couldn't sign off
Yeah,
on, and your parents
yeah,
looked at you like, yeah, you thought you were grown. That's
exactly.
diabetes. That's
Exactly.
diabetes.
That's actually a
Diabetes
really
looks at
good way of
us,
looking at it.
yeah, it looks at
It's
us like
actually
you
a
thought you
very
were
good way of
grown.
looking at it. Exactly. Yeah. Oh, now you need some money.
Uh-huh. Yeah, definitely. Diabetes, I need some money.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's
exactly.
and
So
like
yeah,
being a
so it's
toddler.
yeah. So I think also having a good sort of like support system also helps a lot
Hmm.
with managing those emotions. Like, look, my wife is great with that, man, and she knows. And I was listening to that podcast of you where you were the guest,
Hmm.
and you said, you always say to your wife like, it's cool, I got this, and it's
Yep.
like, but yeah, and then no, but you never actually have.
I never have it. I would
Yeah,
prefer
but you
somebody
you had
else.
some scary stories, man, like just like blacking out and all of that. So that's actually never happened to me.
Hmm.
I've never had a blackout episode where, emergency services actually had to come see me. I overdosed once by accident, but I managed to treat it myself, you
Yeah,
know.
it happened a lot
But yeah,
over the years, but it's been now, I think since 2018, 2019, I have not had any of those
good,
episodes.
good. Yeah,
And um I I don't know if it's because of one, like I'm more I'm not gonna say more, I'm not more focused on my diabetes. I used to like pay attention to it nonstop. It was like
yeah.
everything. But now it's second nature. Like right now, and I
Mm.
know like if I look at my blood sugar, like it's good. Like I know, like I just looked at it, it's 94.
Yeah, oh, it's
And
amazing.
like
Yeah, I'm over like I think I'm like on 180. Yep.
you're
So,
still within your range.
just outside. So I might have to just take a small shot.
Yeah, like I'm like I
Yes.
know that like other than like when I'm sleeping, that's the only time. But I don't fear it anymore because of like technology
Yeah.
has helped me so much. Like I got an
Mm.
app, Sugarmate. Sugarmate
Okay.
actually tells me what my blood sugar is and how much I'm dropping or going up
Yeah.
I think it's every 2 minutes.
Yeah. So this is
So
like mine right now. I had a bad spike earlier, but I managed to. And if you can.
yeah, I can see it. Yep, yep, yep.
Yeah, so 11.9. But yeah, I'll
As
just take a
yeah.
small dose. But like I was saying, managing the emotions, when it comes to high pressure situations, you at work, doing
Hmm.
a presentation, and before the run up to that presentation, you want to make sure that you never took a big dose of insulin, or you manage it accordingly. And if you know you're going somewhere where you're about to walk a lot, so now you know your basal, maybe like lower it by like 1 or 2 units, because you know you're gonna be moving a lot. There's a lot more movement in you. So
And
just those
you
little
said you have two
factors and
cats,
and
right?
preparing well. Yeah, yeah.
Do your cats sense when your
Ooh,
blood sugars are changing?
you know what? I actually had an incident where the one cat, she wouldn't stop jumping on me at night. And this was like just after midnight. And then I'm like, but you see, you're sleepy, so now you feel relaxed, and then you don't necessarily pay attention to feeling
Hmm.
confused
Those
or,
low blood
you know,
sugars.
because exactly, so it was low blood. I was like in the 50s. She just kept jumping on me.
Right. Since
That's crazy.
we purchased our house February
Yeah.
2019. And the one thing my wife said is when we get our house is like we were gonna get a puppy. She
Mhm.
was like, yeah, we're going to get the dog so we can get him trained to be a diabetic alert service dog. And then one day they were doing like it was like a animal shelter. It was like doing this like thing at a school or at a college where they were giving away dogs or whatever for like we only had to pay
Mhm.
like $30 or something. And I already knew I wanted like a black lab to train. I had found the resources. I printed out the manual, like it's free online resources.
Nice.
And I knew that when I got the pup, I was going to train him to become a diabetic alert dog.
Oh, that's
And
amazing.
within the first 3 to 4 months, he was trained. And since then, like my last time having a severe low where I've had like any emergency personnel or couldn't like handle it on my own was I think like that May or June 2019.
Mm.
Since then, I haven't had any, and
Oh,
I
that's
chalk that
amazing.
like number one is because of my pup, like for real.
Oh, that's amazing.
And like say at night, if I know that my blood sugar is high and I've given myself insulin, sometimes like you can't dictate like, okay, is this
Yeah,
insulin going to bring me down too low or whatever? I'll
yeah.
just tell the pup, like pup, I'll bring him in. I'll be like, lay right there
Just put the
because
treats, little bit of
no,
treats right there. Just
look, I'm
keep
like,
the
lay
pop.
right there because I'm going to sleep. He'll wake me up. He'll pull and whine and
Uh,
everything.
oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, they won't stop. They're quite relentless like that. I've seen some videos of alert dogs. They don't stop. They just keep clawing at you
Mhm.
until you check.
I don't recommend them to everyone. I don't. It depends on like your lifestyle,
Yeah,
your family situation, your children, if you're in and out, things like that. Like there's no way someone who's in and out all the time should have a service dog with them. Like I don't take my pup everywhere I go because I know like if I gotta go to like kids' school functions and different things, like I'm not.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I hear
Oh,
you. I hear you, man. I'm so glad you got a love for animals, man. It's really cool. I
right.
love it.
Have you, since your diagnosis, I know you've gone through the whole ancestry DNA thing. Have you
Mm.
checked to see if you had any family history of type 1 diabetes or autoimmune diseases?
So my mom and dad, neither of them have any diabetes. They got a little bit of high blood pressure, but they're in their 70s already, right? There's a cousin on my father's side who's probably, I'd say like 6, 7 years older than I am. And apparently she's had type 1 diabetes since she was 3 years old.
That's the connection.
So, yeah, so that might be the connection. But other than that, I've got no one in my immediate lineage, like,
Mhm.
from
Yeah,
my mom or
it's
dad.
typically not immediate. Um, you will come across siblings, but
Mm.
typically it's like a few,
Yeah,
like it may be cousins, it may even be a couple generations out.
yeah.
Like I didn't find out until the beginning of the pandemic that my great grandmother was diagnosed in 1954 with type 1.
And
And
isn't
like,
it amazing, like how they still managed
oh,
without any tech?
so my great grandmother, she didn't get that opportunity.
Oh,
So
okay.
when
So
she was diagnosed, so I think it was January 19th, 1954, she was being tended to by a nurse. They found her. She was already in a coma.
oh,
Um, And over the next 2 weeks, she was in the hospital or whatever. And that's when she got her diagnosis, like on her death certificate. She died, I think,
oh,
February 2nd,
I
1954.
see.
So her
I see.
diagnosis and her death were like hand in hand. Like on her death
Oh,
certificate, it reads death due to acidosis.
oh, okay. And my wife's grandmother also had type 1 diabetes. And she lived till I think in her late 80s, and I think she was diagnosed as a child. So now I'm trying to find like, what is it like, were the foods more wholesome back then? Were
It's
they,
more so, I've met many people that have lived up in their 80s with type 1 diabetes
yeah.
that were diagnosed at like 6, 4.
Mm,
And it's
wow.
something I just recorded with someone maybe last week, and we were talking about how they didn't have that fear of lows back then, dealing because they used that beef and pork insulin. Um,
Mm-hmm,
and that beef and pork insulin, there weren't a lot of severe lows back then because then they were just
mm-hmm,
managing on keeping a child alive.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So they may have
Yeah.
been in the 200s their entire lifetime.
Sheesh. I mean, sometimes I wonder, like, to myself as well, whenever I'm looking and I'm like in the high, like close to 200 and over 200, I'm like, how much more of this can my body actually take?
As long as
You
you're
know
able
what
to
I'm
get back
saying?
in range within a set amount of time and you're not lingering in that 200 plus
Mm,
for years, not
yeah,
weeks, not days, not months, but years. It takes
yeah,
years of that.
yeah. So I do generally I wake up like under 100, like clockwork every day. No matter what I go sleep on, I
Mhm.
wake up on that same number, every
Right.
morning. So I just struggle with the after with once I've had lunch, then the glucose after that just goes insane. It's like I need two correction shots after lunch, and I don't know what it is.
Mhm.
It probably because I'm sitting still at my desk all day, just working
Right.
and not
It could
moving.
be many different variables that
Yeah.
it could just be the time of day. Like that's
hmm
something we find out like you've never used an insulin pump, right?
I haven't, but I heard your sensitivities can vary.
Yeah, so that's something you find
Yeah.
out when you're using an insulin pump because your
hmm
basal program, your basal profile is set for like every half an hour. So you'll notice
Yeah.
like, okay, maybe you'll notice at like 8 a.m. I need almost 2 units of basal, where
hmm
at 9 a.m. it's back to 1.5. Midnight it might be zero point 0.5. Like that's why you got to do basal
Sure.
testing, and that basal testing will
Sure.
let you know how much insulin you need per half an hour.
Man, I
And
can imagine the
everyone,
trial and error with that.
yeah, no one's basal stays the same throughout the day. So giving yourself like Traceba, Lantus, Toujeo, those types of like those 24-hour acting basal insulins, they're
Yeah.
just flat line, like
Mm.
straight. That's why a lot of
Yeah.
people do go through like those severe lows and stuff at night.
Yeah, no, at night I don't get many lows anymore. In fact, I don't remember the last time I had a low. It's probably like in the night that it happened, but like just once or twice. Like I probably only get like one or two lows like a month probably, man. It's really
That's great. That's amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean it's sometimes and I hang a lot longer on the other end than I actually should, and that's the reality that I've also got to face. Like so it used to be really bad because like the autoimmune response on the pancreas that happened on my liver
Mhm.
as well. And then I was put on a course of corticosteroids, and that was
Oh
the
man,
worst thing ever.
made your blood
You
sugar
know,
rise and get you became
stay
maybe
there.
become insulin resistant.
Exactly. So that happened. So then, once I was off that, I still found myself getting those highs. And then, I take it like in a multi-step approach where I would be like, listen, let's stop. Like for example, let's stop the 400s. You know what I'm saying? Let's stop the 350. Let's stop
Mhm.
the
Not
300.
stop.
Let's
Yep.
stop. You know what I'm saying? So like I
It takes
try to like
steps.
gradually, yeah,
That yeah.
so that I don't do too much at once because suddenly, you might be insulin resistant and then suddenly it just turns around, just tanks.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, I
that's the
do.
weird thing of diabetes.
I advise everyone to test your basal, to test your insulin, because
Mhm.
you know how they recommend us to get seen an endocrinologist
Yeah.
every 3 to 4 months or so. Like
Mhm.
if you're seeing an endocrinologist every 4 months, I recommend for you to do basal testing because they want fasting blood sugars.
Mhm.
um, do that. See if you have any insulin resistance. Test your insulin to carb ratio, your insulin
Mhm.
sensitivity factor, all of those things during
Mhm.
that same time, because
Yeah.
we don't
And that
like.
varies. It really varies like
Mhm.
all the time. And also depending on how much stress you're under.
Yes,
You
sir.
know
Yes,
what I'm
sir.
saying? Yeah, that
Um,
stress will just keep you up there.
what's some good advice you've received or any you'd like to give to someone who's newly diagnosed with type 1 diabetes or someone who's been diagnosed for a while and they just need like some words of advice and encouragement?
Yes, I think in my own experience, when I was diagnosed and I found this community and I was so inspired by everyone and, then I feel like, I'm gonna be the best diabetic that ever lived. And you have all this inspiration flowing. And then you have days where you just dip and you're like, listen, I just want to ignore this. And look, my advice is that it's a long game. And, like I said to you earlier, it's not like about like how long you can live, it's about also how you live. So I think if you can take care of yourself today, it would be a whole lot easier, many, many years from now. And I also think it's important to be part of a community. It's difficult managing this condition in isolation. So, I mean, if there's one piece of advice that someone can take out of this conversation today, I think it's just, don't be isolated. Um, be with someone, be with a group of people, share your honest feelings about diabetes, whether it's good or bad. Be honest with yourself as well. Um, and yeah, I think that's advice I'm also just giving to myself right now, because me just jumping onto this conversation with you, I've, I think for the past year, maybe year and a half, so I used to be very active in South Africa, in terms of awareness and advocacy. And then I just took a step back because probably I was dealing with my own demons. And like I said, be honest with yourself. And me jumping into this conversation with you today, I was just telling my wife earlier, it's like almost like the call that I needed to sort of like just get back on the bandwagon, start talking about the bandwagon. What am I saying? Yeah, just get back onto it again and get back on course. Start talking about it again. Start talking about diabetes again. Because the more you talk about it, and I realize, a lot of people out there, as much as I feel they don't, some people within this country actually look up to me as an example. And if I'm just gonna go out there and, just try to not make my voice heard, then that's sort of like something that someone could be missing out there that they actually needed to hear. You know what I'm saying?
I
So
know exactly what you're saying.
yeah,
Yeah,
I feel like I
you're
feel like
someone that need to be heard, man.
yeah, whether I like it or not, like, whether it's my choice or not, like I think, a lot of people have reached out to me like with certain advice and I have to tell them like, look, I'm not a doctor, but here's what works for me. So at least, people know that I am approachable and they can share sentiments with me. They can ask me advice and, you know, so yeah. So like I said, my piece of advice is, don't live in isolation.
Don't live in isolation. There's nothing good that comes out of living in isolation.
Nah, man,
Seriously,
we
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 have this life
are
we live
community.
for a reason.
Yeah,
Whether it's
definitely,
helping
definitely.
yourself, helping your neighbor, helping a
Mm,
family member, whoever.
yeah,
We just got to
mm,
realize that it's not all about self always. It's not.
yeah, exactly. And on a spiritual level, like I spent a lot of time, asking God, why me? Why am I not able to just get up and go for, go to the gym or do whatever I want without thinking about these sugars? And, like you said, placed here for a purpose. And my purpose in this life is to, help others with what I can, what I've been given and use it to, for the greater good, I guess.
Right. The answer to
You
your
know,
whys or
yeah,
your true
yeah,
reason is to actually be here, be alive, be living, and doing the things that you were doing. Um,
exactly.
and no one can take that from you.
Yeah,
Diabetes can't take
100%,
that from you.
100%.
Um,
Couldn't
we've
agree
been,
more, man.
yeah, we've been good friends for the last 3+ years. But someday, Earl,
Yeah,
someday, one day, there will be a true functional cure for type 1 diabetes.
yeah,
Research has shown
yeah.
it's it's there.
It's
It's just
coming.
not, it's when it's readily available for all of us,
Hmm.
we still
Yeah,
will be able to do things in the community. We'll just be
yeah,
moving on to other communities and being able to help
exactly.
more people without having to worry about the blood sugars dropping or rising and
Yeah,
going crazy and that
for sure.
messing with us emotionally, psychologically, and physically. We won't have to
Mm,
worry about those things. On
exactly.
that day, Earl, you find out that you've been fully cured of type 1 diabetes on that day. and all of your friends, like myself, I've been fully cured also. On that day, you find out you've been fully cured of type 1 diabetes again. What do you do?
Man, that is insane. I don't know. I'll probably just like sort of like be out all night, and then we have this sort of like mountaintop in Cape Town. I'd probably just go there and just sit there and watch the sunrise, or I'll go somewhere on an island and just try to live off the land. Just try to survive and catch fish, because I watch all these shows like
Mhm.
Survivor and all of these things, and I think to myself, whoa, how would a type 1 diabetic handle that? I probably wouldn't. You know what I'm saying?
I understand because me and
So,
my brother, we used to plan on going on Survivor and doing the Amazing Race, all of those
yeah,
things before my diagnosis. And like, nah,
yeah,
that ain't happening now.
exactly. So something like that I'd probably do. I mean, like apart from just like getting a big pizza and just like eating the whole thing up alone without taking
You
insulin.
remember those days, right?
Right?
Yeah, we
Yep.
remember those days, man, being in our
Yep.
20s and young
Exactly.
and teenage years, being able to do whatever, hop on a bike, stay out for all day,
Yeah.
all night. Like,
Exactly. Exactly. We used to just
yeah,
walk from one part of town to the other to just go visit girls, man. We didn't have to think about food and insulin.
exactly, man, all day, all night. Like,
Mm.
and just to know that now we have to think about it. There's
Yeah.
no option to it. We can't
Yeah.
go a day where we're not worried about diabetes
Exactly. And you're
because
walking
if
around like with nothing in your pockets. You
right.
don't have any glucose tabs. You don't have
Look,
any,
don't even need a phone
no
on me or
candy bars.
anything.
Exactly. No phone, nothing.
Nothing, nothing.
Nothing. Just you and your empty pockets, just taking a walk and just ending up where you end up and just sleeping there where you are.
Yeah. And on that day, we find out that we've been cured. Look,
Man, that's
I
nuts.
look, I'm boarding that flight
Yeah.
to South Africa. I'm not bringing no luggage. I'm not
There you
bringing
go.
nothing. No
Yep.
glucose tabs, no meter, no
Exactly.
nothing. I mean, look, I'll have my phone because I gotta stay in contact with my people, but I'm not going to have no blood sugar numbers
Yeah.
on there.
Yeah. But we're not going to wait that long for you to come out here, okay?
Okay. Look,
Yeah,
hopefully they
we're not
both
going to
come.
wait that long.
Hopefully they both come soon, man.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, man. But
Yeah,
like I said,
yes.
you've got a permanent invitation, man. The country's open. We're waiting for you.
I appreciate you
Yeah, man. To
wholeheartedly, my
go.
brother Earl.
Yeah, man.
Uh Again,
Appreciate you too, man.
Earl, it's been a while since we've been working on having this conversation, but we finally got to sit down
We did it.
and you did it. You did it. I'm going to have to dig hard to figure out a title for this episode because the first thing I put was Public Enemy number one
Right.
because you work in public health.
Yeah,
Uh, the one from type 1 diabetes.
yeah.
I was like putting it all together. I was like, that may give, but that whole enemy thing, but public
Yeah.
enemy because you said you were like buck the system, like, and your introduction to hip hop.
Yeah, exactly, man. Yes, I think like, I've already got a plan in my head for when you come out here. I've got
Gotcha.
to take you to all the museums. You got to get the history in. You got to see
Look,
all the farms. You got to see the mountain scenery. You got to see the sea. You got to see the city. You know
mhm,
what I'm saying? You got to get to the music spots.
right,
It's
right.
just, yeah,
Because
this place is
coming up,
so alive, man.
the only thing I know about South Africa coming up is what do you think?
Nelson Mandela.
Nelson Mandela. Yes,
Yep, yep.
Mandela. Yep, yep.
That's it. So I think like, since him, I mean, we've had even Noah out there. What's a young girl, Tyler? She's like probably among the youth now. Um, and yeah, I think there's just been like a lot of different things in South Africa in the news. And I think the world is small, man. You know, I think if you fly out of Philly, you'd probably just go to London. That's about a 5 6 hour 5 5 hour flight. And then from London down to Cape Town, you'd be in like 12 hours.
Okay.
So you literally travel for about 15 to 16 hours to get to South Africa. So if you leave now, you'll be here tomorrow. You know what I'm saying?
If I leave now,
Yeah,
look, when
exactly.
I look outside and I see this weather, I'm like, I should leave now.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
today was like 88. So that's like, it's just been 90s, like all the way, January, February.
Yeah, we're looking
Telling you,
more
man.
like 20s and look, snow, it may
Yeah,
look pretty on pictures, like beautiful,
yeah,
like it's the worst.
yeah. You should actually
Just
just check the flights, man, because like if you can actually, book far ahead of in time, then you could actually, I think, get a ticket for probably between 1,200, $1,500, like for return,
Mhm,
if you think about it. So
gotcha.
yeah, I mean, if you plan,
Are you planning on coming this way this year?
I'm not sure as yet because my sister was just here. So yeah, she just left. But yeah, I'm not sure because my wife has never been to the US, and
Oh,
that's definitely on the cards. That's definitely on the cards. Um, so yeah, but it'll probably likely happen, like, I think after we have our first kid, because right now all the planning is like, focused
mhm.
on that. So yeah, so we'll see. Because I know my sister lives out there, so there's always a place to stay. We've got a friend in New York. We've got a friend in the DC area, um, in Boston as well. I mean, I even know a guy in Connecticut. Um, I know you, but you said you're not in Philly, right? You're just outside of Philly.
Yeah, yeah.
So which part are you?
So I'm actually 30 minutes outside of Philadelphia in Delaware.
Delaware.
So
Okay. Is that
Delaware is
Wilmington?
Wilmington area.
Yeah, Wilmington. I know because I took the Amtrak. I took the Amtrak from Philly to DC
Okay, you took Joe
when I was
Biden's
there.
train. You took Biden's
Oh,
train.
is it?
Joe
Okay, I
Biden
didn't
took
even
that
know.
train every day for like 40 plus years
No
from
way.
Wilmington to DC.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Mhm.
And there's an old clip of Joe Biden in, I don't know where it was. I think it may have been in the House of Representatives or something, but it was like in the 80s where he was saying, and he mentioned South Africa, and like, we cannot have, I don't know what, in the US until the people of South Africa are set
Or-
free. I
Yeah,
don't know if you saw that.
yeah,
Yeah. So yeah.
yeah.
But
But
that's cool, man. I mean,
gotta be remain optimistic.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
on that note, my brother Earl, I truly appreciate you for joining me on the Chronically Will podcast, where we have real conversations with community that need to be heard. Because, brother Earl, you are someone that truly needs to be heard. Thank you.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks again for your time.
All right, man. Enjoy your
All
night.
right.
Gotta get those babies.
Thanks.
Gotta get to making those babies.
Yeah, you